welcome to bonus episode 1. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm gonna try and keep the main show shorter and put more stuff into the bonus feed for our Patreon subscribers. And so we're gonna go an hour and a half on the main show, and then I'm gonna, when we want to talk for another hour or 5, we'll put that in the bonus, and then we'll just say, hey, you want to hear what we're going to talk about next? Then you need to go become a Patreon subscriber and you'll get it. So, Mark Warner, you are the subject of the first bonus show. We've done bonus content, but I'm gonna call it bonus show 1, bonus episode 1. You have had a unique position in history in politics because you unknowingly were around a future vice president for several years. You and I have known each other forever. I mean, when did you and I meet?
Man, it was still when you were with Abdul on WXNT.
Okay, so about a decade ago.
Yeah.
And you were working at Wheeler, Michigan when we first met.
Yep.
Then you went on to work for the mayor, and then you went over and started working for the Pence campaign in 2012. We were actually competitors against each other.
Yep. I was on the Pence Road team.
Right. And so Pence in 2012 ran a campaign where he said absolutely nothing and said nothing but platitudes. Don't you even lie to me, Mark. Now listen, there's only 100 people that can hear this, so it's not like the world can hear this. I want you to be honest. I don't expect you to tell the truth because you're a Republican, but I want you to be honest.
I am going to be honest.
To the best extent that a rhino can be honest. But Mike Pence said nothing in that campaign. Rupert, you guys stole one of our ideas, which was vocational education. Don't you lie to me. Which I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that it tested well and you put it in your little commercials and then signed it into law. But that's part of why we run campaigns is so you'll steal our ideas. But so you worked on the campaign, then you went to work for the governor.
Yeah, I was on his team, but I was in a different area. But
that 2012 campaign, you really got to know him very well. I mean, your campaign team, you were on the intimate staff of 10 people that probably worked in that campaign, right?
Yeah. Now, I wasn't on the inside track of a lot of strategic decisions.
You were tier 2. Let's say that. Yeah. You're not tier 1, right?
I was on the road team running ahead of him.
But enough to know the vice president more than 397 million Americans or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is your honest and fair assessment of Mike Pence as a human being?
A lot of people have misjudged Mike. I have seen Mike Pence up close and personal, and the man truly cares about people. Whether anybody likes to hear that or not, that is the truth.
Right.
Mike Pence cares about people. He cares about their life. He cares about their future. He cares about what they're going through at that time. It's not...
Like, are you talking on a one-to-one basis? Like, if he's standing in front of somebody, he's... how do you mean it?
I think he cares about everyone. Regardless of your politics, regardless of how you live, regardless of what you say or what you do. Excuse me. That man cares.
Okay.
And I have seen him get torched by friends of mine, and he still... gives him a hug.
Like decent to him.
Yeah. I mean, I can't.
He doesn't, to me, seem...
I couldn't do that.
He doesn't... He, in many ways, seems to me to be the anti-Trump in that he doesn't seem to take a lot personally.
No, he doesn't.
He doesn't seem to have thin skin.
No, he has pretty thick skin, and he can take a lot. And I think the reason is because, and I want to get to that level one day. Okay,
I know I won't. So
I know
I might as well just enjoy the talk radio.
I achieve for that every day. Right. But I think what it is if someone knifes me one time, we're done. They could knife Mike in the chest to his face, and be like, "It's okay." He just love on him.
That's kind of stupid, though.
But
like to me, I don't know.
Maybe
he is a little more Christian than I am. But
well, and that's where it is.
Right.
That's where it is. It's his Christian. It's his background. It's his Christian lifestyle. Him and Karen are some of the best people that I know. For as far as elected officials go.
Right.
Right. My pastor is one of the best people. Like I just love my pastors. They're some of the best. They just care. They pour into people. But Mike Pence did that same thing with his staff.
Does Mike go to the church you go to, or did he go to the church you go to?
Mike Pence?
Pence went to a church in Greenwood.
He did, but not mine.
Okay, I think it was Greenwood Community.
I think so, something like that.
I go to the other one, Mount Pleasant. There's like several mega churches on the south side in Greenwood.
So, yeah, I think it was Greenwood Christian Community or something like that. But he just genuinely cares.
He genuinely the Ted Haggards of the world and the people who claim to be Christian but act like House of Cards politicians. Like I never got that sense in Pence. I really think he is the genuine article when it comes to his faith,
right? And
especially with his marriage. I think he is uber in love with Karen, and she is a great lady. Yeah. Like she was my ex-wife's 6th grade teacher, and like when she found that out, every debate, like we had these great conversations. We'd have like long, in-depth conversation. Like I don't know, they were just very polite to the competition, and you don't get that in a lot of politicians.
Right.
So I found Pence to be a very genuine person.
He is. He's very genuine.
Right.
And it's not a fake thing. It's nothing comes out of that is fake.
Right.
He is real about it. I mean, if you follow his daughter Charlotte on Instagram?
I had to unfollow her. I have too much of a crush on her. Honestly, I'm not even lying. Like we'll talk about that off air. Maybe I can get some digits, but my God, what a cutie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she talks about her dad.
Right.
She's like, you know what? We might not always agree, but he still loves us as his children, and he's the same way with his opposite people who don't agree with him on policy.
My feeling about Pence in that 2012 campaign and like being up close to him, and I mean, I only really ever kind of said hi to him a little bit. I mean, I got to know Mrs. Pence much better, but it seemed to me that Pence sometimes plays a role, and he is acting. Like so much about that 2012 gubernatorial campaign seemed like they had gone to Hollywood writers to write a gubernatorial campaign speech, and then he delivered that. Like, but that's the way that it translated to me. It's like he may believe that, but like that's such a you're asking me to believe that there's no cynicism in the man whatsoever, which is hard to believe having been around politics so long. He doesn't seem to be cynical in any way, shape, or form.
I have never. As much as I've been around him, never have seen it.
Just a ball of optimism and positivity.
Yeah. What I've seen.
Okay.
Now, you got to remember, I haven't sat in all the key meetings and all that stuff, right?
The door shuts and look at these motherfuckers.
I very much doubt that.
Right.
But, he's like every other person. He has his faults. He makes his mistakes. But he doesn't let it drive his attitude, right?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, me, if I screw up something, I'm going to rip down the wall.
Sure.
Like, yeah, mother.
Anger issues.
Yeah. Now, that's something I've really worked on this past year.
Mm-hmm.
And have really, I really poured into it. And it helped me a lot during this past primary.
Right.
Right? It was just a rough primary.
Yeah, you worked for Todd Rokita.
Yeah.
Who I know somewhat well.
But it was just a rough primary.
Right.
But I stayed above the fray. I stayed classy. If I had a spat that I needed to deal with, I went into the back room and I shut the door and I just screamed and threw some stuff around and walked back out. And I was like,
right.
That's what I did. But I really been pouring into working on that.
Mm-hmm.
I see it with Mike.
Right.
Mike is just who he is. You're going to get who he is.
Right.
There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be people that are listening to this. Bullshit. No, that's who he is.
Compared to other politicians that you've worked for, because you've worked for, like Mayor Ballard, who I have the utmost respect for, Mayor Ballard is just like...
Mayor Ballard's a Marine.
He's a Marine, and he acts like a Marine, and
Yeah.
you didn't feel bad if you said fuck around Greg Ballard, but if you said fuck around Mike Pence, you might feel bad.
Yeah. There was a couple times I did that. I didn't realize I did it.
I mean, but in terms of leadership style and management style, compare Mike Pence to some of the other people that you worked with.
So, Mike Pence management style is very much he puts trust into his people, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to put you in that position, I trust you to get the job done.
Right.
Okay. And I trust you to give me the information that I need to help me make the decisions that I need to make.
Right.
Okay. Todd Rokita. Perfect example of if he puts you in that role, he expects you to get it done, give him the information so he's not blindsided.
Right.
The one thing I learned about working for Todd is if you give him the information and you put it in front of him, he'll be fine.
Right.
But if he doesn't see something from you, he's like, what did you do? What's going on? Why? Blah, 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 blah.
Right. Keep me in the loop.
Yeah.
Type of style.
And the one thing I learned is I kept him in the loop, and it always worked out fine.
Right.
Mike Pence was the same way. If you told him what you were doing and you let him know what was going on, he was fine.
Right.
But he's like any other person. He don't want to be blindsided.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
By stuff.
So not a micromanager. It doesn't seem to
Mike Pence was not a micromanager.
He doesn't seem to have much of an ego. I mean, there's definitely ambition there, so there has to be ego somewhere, but he doesn't seem to be an arrogant person necessarily. He's maybe confident, but not arrogant.
He is very confident about what he believes.
Right.
But he is not arrogant. And the thing that with Mike is you will never see him micromanage. It's just not who he is.
Sure.
If he puts you in that position, he trusts you to do it and moves on. A lot of people will say Todd Rokita is a micromanager. He didn't micromanage me.
Right.
Why? Because I got my job done.
Right. Yeah.
He didn't have to worry about
If
me.
he's on your ass, it's because you're not doing something right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's how it is where I work.
Yeah.
I work for one of the most successful radio broadcasters in history. And Tom is...
Abdul?
Yeah. No, Tom Griswold, who is one of the most intelligent men I've ever met, one of the hardest working men I've ever met, and Tom never tells me what to do. Because he knows he's Tom has hired a team of people who could do consulting for their various roles.
Right.
And I don't need to worry about it. All I got to worry about is the dick jokes on the air tomorrow, because I have... He knows this better than I do. He knows this better than I do. She knows this better than I do. Like, no one knows entertainment, television, comedians better than our talent booker, Grace. Like, her whole life is watching TV. Every relatable that she has, every story is about, I don't know, Alexander Skarsgård or whatever, some famous person met some Grey's Anatomy woman, and you're like, do you have any experiences in your life? But that's what makes her so good at her job, and it's great to work for people who kind of have that confidence, have that trust in their people, and can let go, and just relax a little bit.
I would say with Mayor Ballard, he was the same way.
Right.
I put you in this position, I expect you to get the job done.
Yeah.
Now, if you went once every couple months, we would sit around the table with him in the mayor's conference room and talk to him about stuff. And I'll never forget one day I was like, it's like, why isn't that solved? I was like, DPW won't solve it. Hand me my phone. You're the director.
Right.
I want this problem solved, and I want it solved now.
Right. I think this is just...
And the director was like, Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think it's just a trait of successful people. They know how to relax and let people do their thing. You know, you hire smart people, let them do it.
Yeah.
And experienced people. So what would you say to my criticism of Mike Pence and his administration here in Indiana, at least, that Pence had the fortune and misfortune of following Mitch Daniels, who is one of the greatest politicians and people I've ever met. Like, Mitch Daniels he's
brilliant,
uber smart. I mean, had Mitch Daniels been elected president, this country, it would have been, it would be a different ball game than Donald Trump. Like, it's a shame that, well, I won't say why he didn't run for president, but it ain't Mitch. He's just I have a man crush on Mitch Daniels. I know he's a Republican, but if you had been here for the last 15 years, you'd know why too.
Right.
Like, Daniels got the state in a shape that Indiana has never seen. He managed bureaucracy in a way that was so flawless. He got Indiana was a state that for 30 years had been debating daylight savings time, but wouldn't pull the trigger because we were scared.
So annoying.
And it's a state that gets very set in its ways and doesn't like change. And Mitch Daniels, within 2 years, changed it and got it through, and had some very big problems over the course of his 8 years, but got them done. And Mike Pence benefited from the economy very well, and that's one of the benefits of following him. Now, Mitch is also the person who, when he came in, said public service is the highest service. So my my cabinet secretary of commerce is going to be Mickey Maurer, a Democrat who, had supported his opponent, because I want the right person for the job, not necessarily the right party for the job. I mean, he put Libertarians. I handed a list of Libertarians when I was executive director of the state party to Mitch Daniels' chief of staff, now Governor Eric Holcomb, and they said, we're going to start because we have to have two parties on this commission, so we'd rather have Republicans and Libertarians than Republicans and Democrats.
Right.
So they started appointing, like, Mark Rutherford, who's head of the Defenders Commission. I was put on a commission by your boss, Todd Rokita, for instance. So Mitch valued intellectual diversity. And one of the things that I ding Pence on for his time as governor is that he didn't have that same value of diversity. Mike has a governor, vice president, Pence, whatever, he's very much a talk radio Republican. And he was a talk radio show host, which was hilarious about 2012 because it was a talk radio show host lawyer in Mike Pence versus a talk radio show lawyer in John Gregg versus the reality TV star Rupert. And we got all the crap for being the showman. But Pence has a very talk radio view of politics, and it's that you surround yourself with people who think like you, batten down the hatches, and prepare for battle.
I disagree.
Okay, tell me why.
Because he was the one that appointed Jim Schellinger to, what was it?
Former, he was a gubernatorial candidate, Democrat.
But he appointed him to IEDC, IEDC, Indiana Economic Development,
right?
Corporate. A lot of people said that Mike Pence had people around him that agreed with him.
Sure.
False. You can look at Bill Smith. You can look at Jeff Cardwell. They agree with him.
Right.
Okay? But he had policy people in there that didn't fully agree with him.
Mm-hmm.
He had people in that office that didn't fully agree with him. And he had people that he appointed that didn't fully agree with him.
Right.
Just because it's said, or that's the rumor, that isn't true. I didn't agree with Mike Pence on needle exchange. I don't agree with him now on needle exchange, and I never will agree with him or any other Republican on needle exchange.
Right.
I think it's a sham. Yeah, sure, diseases are down, but usage has ramped up.
Right.
Needle exchange was one of the worst ideas ever.
So let's flesh that out. For instance, for those of you who aren't familiar, like San Francisco is talking about opening up a clinic where you can go and shoot up in the clinic.
Yeah.
Where they register
That's
people.
dumb.
All right, why is that dumb?
Because why enable people to use? Why are my tax dollars going to people to use drugs. I'm not paying people to use drugs. It's not what I do.
Right.
Okay, I'm not paying for your addiction.
Sure.
Get it checked. And if you don't want it checked, I'm not paying for it.
Right. But
own it yourself.
What about the argument that people come in, they check in, they use and they're more likely to get services because they're actually meeting people with services?
No. Give them services. Don't give them drugs.
Right.
Don't give them drugs. This is why government needs to stay out of this.
Mm-hmm.
This is exactly why government needs to stay out of this.
Right.
Because they are already screwing it up. Oh, let's give them some needles and drugs. No, you stupid idiots. That's not going to solve the problem.
Can you imagine how bad government heroin would be?
Oh my God. They would screw that up. Right? So don't do that. And that's where I disagreed with Mike Pence on policy-wise.
Sure.
On a big policy decision. I disagreed with him vehemently on it.
So tell us a couple stories that you think kind of illustrate the character of Mike Pence and who he is.
So, do you remember back in 2012 when my old church and the pastor got shot and killed?
Yeah.
Okay. That was a perfect example. One of my friends, because I was missing something. I don't know what I was doing. But they told Mike, they're like, hey, Mark, can't make it. Like, he won't be here today. Mike called me personally just to see how I was doing.
Right.
You don't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You're governor. You don't have to do that.
Right.
You don't have to do that. But he did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
2, I've seen his staff that was inside the
Really?
governor.
You've seen his staff,
Right.
have you?
Whatever. His staff that was around him.
How impressive was his staff?
Libertarian podcast. What are you, 5?
Yes.
Yeah, I am 5. No.
You don't make it this big if you're not immature. Trust me, I've learned it from the best.
Abdul.
Tom.
Yeah. So, listen, being around his staff and the people around him.
Now, how near were... Never mind. I'm sorry.
Anyway.
Go ahead.
If you saw one of those people having a bad day and he noticed it, he would stop what he was doing and go see that person and be like, all right, what's going on?
Right.
How can I help? What can we do to help? Where you at? Where's your head at?
A genuine appreciation and care for the people that are around him.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Some might say that empathy is completely missing in his boss. Total opposite of Donald Trump, where Donald Trump views everything, in my opinion, as very transactional. Whereas, what did you make of the him choosing to be Donald Trump's running mate? Because it does seem
brilliant.
It seems so dichotomous. It seems,
but hold on,
a rejection of what he actually believes.
It was brilliant.
Okay,
because 1, Donald Trump needed the governors on his side. He needed Congress on his side.
Right.
If he had to pick Newt Gingrich or somebody like that who's a bomb thrower, he'd have never had those guys.
Right.
Now, he might have gotten some congressional members on board with Newt. Newt could have went up to the Hill and been like, all right, I need you boys on board.
Right.
Okay. There might have been a few governors that are jumping on board, but they would have stayed out of it.
Right.
Where Mike brought the Republican Governors Association. He brought in the NRSC. He brought in the NRCC. He brought in everybody and said, we need you to get on board.
Yeah, because he had been third in the House. I mean, he was there long enough to help
12 years.
help write the Patriot Act. He used to brag about writing the Patriot Act on his website. Somehow he left that off after around 2010. That seemed to disappear from the website, Mark.
But I think for Donald Trump, for President Trump to have picked Mike Pence was brilliant.
Right.
Because he needed someone that wasn't going to be the bomb thrower. Mm-hmm. He needed someone to stand in that gap. So when he was like, Mike Pence would walk in and go, okay.
So did you find out before it leaked? Like, did you have insider knowledge?
So, funny story.
Because it seems like that was pretty loosely loosely kept.
It was very like the funny story. So Vaughn Hilliard, who is an NBC reporter out of DC, was sent here to follow Mike around fairs, festivals, parades. And we're like, why?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I have it on good authority that they're vetting him right now.
Right.
When I had the feeling that it was going to happen, I'll never forget. Cardwell came to my office and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you. Come to my office now."
Cardwell was the state
chairman at the time,
and you were the political director of the state party. Right.
So I went down there and I was like, "What's up?" And he goes, "Vaughn Hilliard's in town, NBC reporter." I was like, "Oh yeah, I follow him on Twitter. Like, a great guy." He's like, "He's gonna be in town for a while. He's gonna be following Mike around. He's gonna be around us. Just letting you know. Like, Mike's being vetted. This is what I'm being told."
Right.
So Jeff called Mike. Mike's like, that's news to me. That's news to me that I'm being vetted. And look, Mike and Jeff have been friends for 30 plus years.
Right.
So he's going to tell Jeff if he's being vetted.
Right.
And he looked at Jeff and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
So the state chairman knew before Pence did.
He had an idea.
Right.
But this was Vaughn who was saying it's just a source. Right. So, I didn't know, but I was like, okay, this is going to happen. When Mike announced him at the Westfield rally, I was like, he's going to be picked.
Yeah.
He's going to be picked. This guy is going to be picked vice president. Like, I don't know who else he's going to pick. You're not going to endorse Ted Cruz and then
in Indiana,
and then 4 days later, and make the announcement that Donald Trump's here. This is great.
Well, that's not true because he did consider dumping Pence reportedly like 2 days after he picked him for whatever reason. I don't remember what it was. It was because of the leak. It leaked. Pence's people allegedly had leaked that he was being considered. Were you the leaker? Are you Deep Throat?
No.
I didn't think you had the juice to leak. But.
No, I don't leak.
Yeah.
I don't leak. But what was funny about that whole situation was being a part of that whole process.
Right.
To where Mike was picked. We had to pick a gubernatorial candidate.
Right.
To run the last 100 days.
Right.
Okay. And Mike endorsed Eric to be the governor, which, Eric was his LG.
Right.
You picked that guy.
Former state chairman, former chief of staff to Mitch Daniels, lieutenant governor.
Yeah.
Eric Holcomb is a good guy who is a very intelligent man. It seemed like the common sense safe pick,
Right. So being on the front row of that history was amazing to be a part of that.
What other cool little story from that period are you able to tell?
I can talk about how they picked him or how they picked Eric.
I don't know that would necessarily be as much of a
okay. So you want to talk about?
I think
you want to talk about the Mike how that process worked then?
Yeah. That'd be
okay.
Good. Yeah.
So what happens in the state of Indiana? The rule is you cannot be on the ballot twice for two different offices.
Right.
In the same election cycle.
Right.
So if you're attorney general and you want to run for Senate, and if that's the same year of that race, you have to pull yourself off the ballot.
Well, it happened to your boss. Your boss ran for Senate, lost, and then he had to resign his congressional seat.
Yeah, so he's still in Congress until January.
Right.
But he had to give up his
congressional seat to run for Senate. Yeah.
So Mike Pence, when Mike Pence got picked to be vice president of the United States to run with Trump, Mike had to pull his name off the ballot, and then we had to pick a gubernatorial candidate.
Right.
That process was interesting to say the least,
mm-hmm.
because you had everybody jockeying for somebody. Okay,
right.
They wanted Rokita, they wanted Susan, or they wanted Eric. But the process of that was Mike Pence then had Secret Service around him.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. That was weird.
Why?
Because you couldn't get close to him anymore. So, for example, we're out in Cleveland for the national convention.
Right.
Mike Pence gets nominated on that Wednesday night. Okay. Eric Holcomb, who's now governor, nominated him from the floor.
Right.
And then went and spoke in front of millions of people. The next morning, we had an Indiana breakfast right along the Lake Erie. It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Mike comes out to the event. Well, when we get out there, we had to go through Secret Service. We had to go through these metal detectors, all this crap. And we're like, what the hell is going on here?
Your life changes a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
So Mike gets there, and for years, if Mike pulled up, Jeff Cardwell walked up to the door.
Right.
Jeff starts walking towards the Tahoe, and these agents just jump in front of him. They're like, where are you going? Jeff is like, I'm going to walk in with Mike. And they're like, no, you're not. He goes, he just texted me and told me to meet him at the Tahoe. Like, see this?
Right.
He said, meet me at the Tahoe. And they're like, you're not going anywhere near that.
Wow.
And Jeff is like, but he wants me to come near that. And they're like, sir, you need to get back inside. So Jeff turns around, walks back inside, and Mike gets out of the tire and goes, hey, come on, come here, Jeff. Jeff is like, they won't. He's like, guys, like, let him by. And they're like, no. And it was like, holy crap, this is just different now. So you got to understand, you're in this big, like, barn type setting. Everybody there is from Indiana, and everybody knows Mike Pence.
Right. If you're at the national convention,
right,
in the Indiana delegation, if you've been elected a delegate to the national convention, which is very difficult. It's not as easy as you think. You have to be a party insider.
Right. And you have to have some money because it is expensive to go.
Right.
So Mike and Karen are up there talking, and Mike's like, I just love you people. I'm so thankful that you guys have supported me all these years, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
He steps down, and Mike. Mike wants to work the room.
Yeah.
Plus, these are his people.
Yeah.
He's walking around the room, and he steps off the podium. So here's your podium. There's like a few tables here and then tables all the way back.
Sure. Typical setup.
Yeah. Mike gets down, and he has 2 or 3 agents standing in front of the podium like he always does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he does now.
Right.
And all of a sudden, he gets to like the second table. And I'm standing back there with a couple of buddies of mine, some other friends. And all of a sudden, you see agent. And they start circling him and Karen after the third table and walking towards them like you're corralling a cattle, like you're corralling cattle, right? And they just start swooping in on him very slowly, very strategically. Mm-hmm. And they're like this, they're talking to each other, and they're holding their earpieces, and then they're doing this again. And they start pushing them out. And you could tell when they were walking out through the doorway that they were pissed.
Right.
These are my people.
I want to stick around. Yeah.
Right. They just pushed him out. And the reason is there was knives on the table, and they weren't for sure.
Oh, brother.
Yeah. That was...
I feel like...
when I heard that story, I was like, holy shit.
Do you feel like there's a little bit of the Secret Service, like, sending a message to the noobs? Like, sorry, that's the black helicopters flying over. But do you feel like there was like a sense of, maybe the Secret Service has an unwritten policy that when they get a noob like Pence or like Trump, that they're gonna it's like your first day in federal pound me in the ass prison, you got to punch a guy,
right?
So maybe they're punching the guy right in the beginning to let you know, hey, we're in charge here,
right? And
it doesn't matter what you want, we're in charge,
right?
And so I wonder, butter knives, come on,
come on, guys. Like, first of all,
for people that have given Mike Pence millions of dollars over the years,
like come on, guys. Like, somebody's not gonna pull a butter knife on. What are they gonna do? Give him a staph infection?
Right?
Like, come on.
Mike's a little doughy, anyways. It ain't gonna make it that far.
Come on,
in, right?
Come on, guys. So they walked him out into the Tahoe and gone. The motorcade was gone.
Right.
And I was like, standing there, I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Man, if I had Secret Service, that would be the move. 5 minutes in, you swoop me out like there's something, because that'd be a badass move. Because, like, in front of your friends, you're like, sorry, guys, I got to go home early. I can't.
Yeah.
My life's in danger. I'm very important.
Yeah,
I got to go.
you have butter knives and we're fucked, right? So it was funny because, so fast forward to about a month later, he comes back to town, and I get a call. I don't even remember what night it was. I get a call the night before. Hey, do you want to drive in the motorcade? This was for the governor's bike ride.
Right.
Now, you could tell they've gotten more laxed because they weren't like
right
around him.
Yeah.
So this was for the governor's motorcycle ride for National Guard, fundraising for the National Guard.
Right.
So I was like, absolutely, I'll drive in the motorcade. They're like, it's during the bike ride. I was like, all right. So the next morning I get to the JW Marriott at 6 a.m., meet with this agent, and he's like, here's the keys to that black expedition out there. You take that and you go to the governor's residence. Here's the address. I'm like, I know the address. I know where I'm going. I know.
Right, yeah.
He's like, get your ass up there now. I'm like, okay. So I drive up there. They check the vehicle. Dog does his thing.
Right.
I drive in, and they're like, okay, here's what you're going to do. Okay? This is how this is going to work. We are going to take the motorcade to downtown to the Circle. That's where the motorcycle ride is going to take place from. Then we're going to drive all the way down towards Batesville. And then you're going to drop off halfway down, and then you're going to go back to the ALEC conference, because where he's going to be speaking there, but we need you to advance that.
Right.
Okay. I'm like, where am I at in the motorcade line? And they're like, this is where it gets little questionable of, do you really want to do this, or do you want to be in a different vehicle? Like, what am I, following a freaking goat? Dude, tell me where I'm going to be following. He's like, you're going to be following the jump vehicle. What's that? Come here. They said, see that Suburban over there? I'm like, yeah. Go open up the back door. Oh, I'm not touching that fucking thing.
There could be
you go open that fucking
there could
door.
be machine guns.
And sure enough,
there were machine guns.
they opened up that back door. There's two guys sitting in a jump seat. And this thing is rigged to the hilt. And they're like, you're behind this vehicle. If that back window opens, get out of the way. Because shit's about to go down. Right? Shit is about to happen, and you don't want to be in the direct
You're
line.
between the vice president and snipers.
Well, yeah, the vice president is in this vehicle. This is the jump vehicle, and I'm here.
The last time that happened, it didn't work out so well for Governor Connolly.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, this is fun. And he's like, do you want to be behind? Oh, fuck yeah, I do. Absolutely.
Right.
Why wouldn't I want to be behind this vehicle?
Bring it on, Ahmad.
Yeah, the fucking shit.
Right.
This is great. So this one agent jumps out and he goes, I'm going to ride with you. You seem like you would be fun. I was like, okay. And they said, but the thing is you're going to have reporters in your vehicle. And your back window is going to be open the whole time, and they're going to be filming. I was like, okay.
Right.
All right. So the agent in the front seat with me is from Louisville, Kentucky. Great guy. And we're taking off. We take off. And that was the funnest part of my day, was driving down Illinois Street at 40, 50 miles an hour, just blasting through fucking lights.
Right.
I'm like, this is how I should travel every day.
Right. Yes.
This is how it should be done every day. We get downtown. There's like 1,200 motorcycles lined up. Right. Mike gets on his motorcycle, and he takes off with the state police, some Secret Service agents, and a bunch of other people that were cleared by Secret Service to be in that
I can't believe they let him ride a motorcycle. Like, the state police didn't even like when Governor Daniels rode his motorcycle. They especially didn't like when Governor Daniels would leave without them. Because
I was shocked they let him do it.
Because the last day Abdul was on the air, Governor Daniels showed up early, and then a Secret Service detail from the state police showed up about 15 minutes later.
Pissed off.
And they're like, Governor, you cannot do this.
Yeah, you are not allowed to just take off.
And he's like, how many times do I have to tell you nobody wants to kill me?
Yeah.
And they were like, would you like to see the letters otherwise?
Yeah. We have letters that prove differently, buddy. So
I can't believe they let the vice president ride on a motorcycle and a group of people.
Honestly, I was shocked that it was even happening.
Right.
But they had him very well protected.
Right.
Like, they had him and the people that were around him on bikes mostly were Secret Service, and then they had some state reps and state senators that were approved by the Secret Service to ride in that.
And let's be honest, vice president, kind of useless, right?
Well, not really.
The president ain't riding in the motorcycle, but,
No.
John Adams basically said.
So we were driving down through there, and we went out through the east side, past, Washington Street and down through, and then onto 465. Under 465, I should say, and then on to 52, and then down south. And all of a sudden, agent sitting next to me goes, "Stop your vehicle." I'm like,
right.
And the reporter is like, he looks like, he's like that. He's like,
got the fake news.
He's like, okay. He goes, "We're going back to Indy." He's like, "Go." I was like, "What? The fuck? What?" He's like, "Just turn around and go." So I'm going up 52, probably 85, 90 mile an hour.
Do you have the lights? Or?
I have no lights on this vehicle.
Okay.
But I have the Federal Secret Service agent with me,
Right.
so if we get pulled over, we're going to be fine.
Right. Why did you get chosen to drive this special vehicle, by the way?
They needed extra drivers.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so
they figure being a body man for Pence, like you're from Indiana. Yeah. Okay.
You know the roads, you're fine.
Right. So you're going 80 back to Indy, right?
Yeah. So we get on 465, and he looks over at "Can you go a little bit faster? We got to get there." I'm like, "Okay." I'm going up 465 at 90 miles an hour.
Oh, please. I do that every day.
But
allegedly.
Allegedly?
Yeah. I don't have federal Secret Service with me in the car.
So I was like, and we get downtown, and all of a sudden, so when you're in the motorcade, you have to wear a pin.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to wear a pin, and it's the letter of the day.
Okay.
And if you have a certain letter, you can go everywhere. And if you don't have a certain letter, you can't go everywhere.
Right.
There's only certain areas you can go. So I had the letter where I could go everywhere.
Right. Did Big Bird hand this out at the beginning?
Yeah. So all of these state lawmakers, lobbyists, everybody stand outside of the room because Secret Service is canvassing the room where the Alec luncheon was going to be.
Right.
So it's like...
ALEC meaning the
American Legislative Council.
Yeah, it's the bugaboo for the liberals. Yeah, they're real freaked out about this.
Yeah, they're
the
rah.
This is the Koch brothers of the
rah.
Right.
So I walk past all these lawmakers, and this Secret Service agent looks at my pin and opens up the door, and they're like, "Hey, how the hell are you getting in there?" And I'm like,
"I'm fancy, sorry."
Yeah. So I walk in. I got to be a part of that. And I got to drive in 3 more motorcades.
That's cool.
The funnest one I got to drive in was on Inauguration Day for Holcomb and the statewide team. Because Mike came back for that.
Right.
And we're sitting in the back behind the state fairgrounds, where they had the inauguration.
Mm-hmm.
And when we take off, we're leaving. And there must have been a light on, like one of the red lights up off of 38th Street up by Pennsylvania.
All right.
And all of a sudden, the motorcade just starts jumping over the median and driving down the wrong side of 38th Street
Which is
at
not a good
60
idea.
miles an hour.
Right.
And fucking cops are just shoving cars off to the side, and they're just like, and they radioed back. They're like, "We're going back to the residents to pick up some final things, you guys head to the airport.
Yeah.
Because I had staff with me.
I was in Philly, and Pence was there the Monday I flew in, and the Uber driver's just like, Pence ruined Philly today. We could go nowhere because the vice president was blocking everything. I go, trust me, he's been blocking everything in Indiana for longer than today. So.
Oh, for crying out loud. But that's being
cool.
a part of that history and being a part of that was just amazing.
Yeah.
It's something that I can never just forget. It's historic.
All right, so I want to ask you a question. You don't have to answer this, but I would love you to, because I have long surmised that this was the case, and I want to put you on record for the Libertarians in the state, in Indiana, about the 2016 gubernatorial race. I think you know what I'm going to ask about, which was our candidate race more than anything. So,
Rex Bell?
Yeah, so Rex Bell versus Jim Wallace. And so Pence in 2012...
Rex Bell versus Jim Wallace.
Yeah, so I'll explain in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah. So you know about Jim Wallace's past, two
Right.
domestic issues.
Right.
And he basically... He messed up, but he also had some help in messing up in 2012, and Pence got him pushed off the ballot in 2012. And so he wanted to run in 2016 against Pence. And the truth is that Pence probably would have lost the 2012 race with 2 or 3 more weeks if that had gone on. And there are some questions if Pence could win re-election or not. It was pretty hairy. So first question is... how close, I'm not going to ask you if you think Pence was going to win, because you're going to say yes, but how close would the 2016 gubernatorial race have been, without giving away all the secrets, but you're political director of the state party, so you had probably a pretty good idea. How tight do you think that 2016 race would have been between John Gregg, Rex Bell, and Mike Pence?
I would say it depended who was on the ballot.
Let's say it's Mike Pence, John Gregg.
No, I'm talking like presidential.
Okay, gotcha.
So Hillary Clinton, if she would have been the nominee, or if she would have been, well, she was.
Right.
But I think sorry.
John Kasich is a weak candidate.
If John Kasich or anybody else would have been on the ballot,
Clinton.
would have been on that ballot, it would have been tight, my guess. That's just my...
But Trump turned out the state so hard.
Yeah. Trump turned out, and that race wouldn't have been... It would have been 6 to 10 points.
Gotcha.
That would have been... Because that's what Eric won by, was 6 points.
Right.
But I think if it would have been anybody else, it would have been a tight race.
So
I think Mike... And I'm being... perfectly honest about this.
Yeah.
I think Mike Pence would have still won.
Uh-huh.
But I think it would have been...
Without that extra turnout, it would have been real close.
It would have been real tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a fight. We had Jim Wallace versus Rex Bell. And
I kind of watched that.
Huh? Yeah. I bet you guys did.
On Facebook.
Right, yeah. So at this, as the political director of the state party, I'm sure you were watching our fight. I mean, Rex Bell is the most successful libertarian candidate in the state's history. And ran
Great
guy, ran a good race, but had some health issues there at the end that really hurt his situation. Who would you have preferred to go against? And B, how likely would the Pence campaign and the state party of the Republican Party, how likely would they have been to bring up Jim Wallace's past in that race, especially if it's tight?
State party probably wouldn't have brought up the past.
Mm-hmm.
It would have probably been the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Or it would have been the RGA.
Right.
The state party wouldn't have done it.
Republican Governors Association.
Yeah. They probably would have done it.
But it was on the table.
By them, I'm assuming it was.
Yeah.
It would have been on the table by me, because that's relevant.
Right.
You beat your wife. Come on, dude.
Right.
Right? So I think that would have been relevant for me to do. I would have done it, but I'm also not the boss. Right?
Well, you're very nice. That's
well, no. I would have gone hardball.
Right.
Jeff wouldn't have.
Right.
And that's just because Jeff doesn't believe that you should just throw mud just because.
So a lot of
I could be wrong, and he would have done it.
A lot of libertarians looked at it and said, Wallace is a Harvard grad, very accomplished businessman,
great,
very nice guy, has a really good resume, West Point, right-leaning former Republican. He had been a Republican that January of 2016.
Yeah.
And so, they're not going to bring this up. There's no way that this is going to come up, and he's going to run the better race. And so if it does come up, he's going to be able to defeat it.
The RGA would have sliced him in half.
And why do you think that?
Because the RGA is powerful, and they got some good people, and they know how to just drive it home.
Do you think the Libertarian Party of Indiana would have been able to fight back?
No.
Okay, why?
Because you wouldn't have had the money to fight back.
Right.
The RGA has millions of dollars at their disposal.
Right.
Sheldon Adelson, the Koch brothers. Okay, there's two billionaires right there that we have at our disposal, right?
And no matter how rich Wallace was, he wasn't fighting billionaires.
Right. Jim Wallace could have spent every dime he had.
Right.
And borrowed more and still not had enough.
Yeah, because he was promising to put $1 million into the race.
That wouldn't have touched. That wouldn't have touched anything. Look, I've been on several statewide races. $1 million isn't going to get you far in the statewide race.
Right.
It's going to get you some Indianapolis medians, maybe some Fort Wayne median. That's about it.
Right.
And you're going to have to spend all your money on that just to fight back. And you're not going to have enough. For example, Senate race. Mike Braun spent $6.5 million.
Right. But you guys spent 2.5.
We spent
3.
We spent close to 3.
Right.
And we couldn't.
Right. But you spent $3 million. That should be able to fight off $6.5 million.
No. No. Especially when it comes to him buying all of the state TV.
Right.
So where we couldn't be on Chicago media, he could afford it.
Right.
So, for example, I was in Skillman Ford one morning getting my oil changed, and I was there for 2 hours. Braun, Rokita, Braun, Messer, Rokita, Braun.
Yeah, it's really shitty that a guy can just buy a Senate seat now. And Trey Hollingsworth can just buy a congressional seat. It's not an Indiana thing. It just happens all over the place. There's not, the Jim Banks of the world who come up the right way and put their heart and soul into politics. And, Jim Banks is a congressman from the Fort Wayne, Indiana area.
Great guy.
One of the 3 politicians that has ever reached out to actually find out what Libertarian Party people are thinking.
Right.
Jim Banks, Todd Rokita, and Eric Holcomb for the Governor Mitch Daniels.
Right.
And Richard Mourdock came and spoke to us. So it's a Jim Banks who is a great person, who is a rock solid Republican who will actually listen to a lot of different people and a lot of different ideas, and it has put time in the trenches, is vulnerable to a Trey Hollingsworth who can just buy a seat.
Well, let me say this about Trey, because I got to know Trey during the 2016 election. Mm-hmm. And Trey is a solid conservative. Mm-hmm. He'll spend about 2 to 3 hours a day, and he'll make calls. And not to party leaders.
Right.
Now, he'll call those people. He'll call the county chairs, and he'll talk to them, the state reps and state senators. But he'll spend 2 to 3 hours a day calling random constituents throughout his district.
Right.
They're talking. He's calling the Chris Spangles of Orange County.
Right.
They don't know Trey Hollingsworth from a load of hay.
Orange County, Indiana.
Yeah, down south in his district. They don't know Trey Hollingsworth from a load of hay except for the mailers they get.
Right.
But he picks up the phone and says, "Hey, Chris, Congressman Hollingsworth." You're like, "Oh, bullshit." And you're like, "No, it's really Congressman Hollingsworth. I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think." And the thing is, yeah, it sucks when people buy a seat, but at the end of the day, guys, for leadership, they don't owe leadership nothing.
Right.
When leadership tells Trey Hollingsworth told a story one night at a dinner. He's like, yeah, leadership wanted to wine and dine me one night. They wanted to give me a better office. And he's like, I don't need any of that. I'm not voting for a CR.
Right. Well, that's part of the problem for Republicans that they instituted the instituted term limits for committee seats, and then they took away pork, and it completely gutted the power on both parties in terms of Congress, and so you now have a Congress that's very toothless as a result, and executive power is running rampant. But all right, well, we got to wrap up. And I just got a text from a friend who asked, "What's a cuck?" So I've got to answer this very
What the hell?
I've got to answer Hannah and give her an answer to what when someone asks you what a cuck is, that's a beautiful moment in their life.
What?
I'm just gonna say Aaron Ewert. So
Oh,
all right. Thanks so much for the time.
You're welcome,
and
man.
for the insight. Even though you're a rhino, it was a lot of fun having you on.
yeah. When I'm able to do this more often after my job,
Yeah, I'd love to have you back.
yeah, I'll do it more often.
Bring some of your rhino friends, even Rakita. If Rakita's not mad at me for yelling at him about the debate commission, then bring Rakita around. I'd love to have him on.
I think he would probably do it.
I'd love to have a former congressman on who doesn't give a shit, like Todd doesn't give a shit, talking about what it's really like to be in Congress. So please carry that message back to him.
I will,
and let him know. There's almost 10,000 people listening to this at this point. So we're killing it. So
sweet.
Maybe he'll choose better choice in fashion when he shows up than you.
Probably will.
All right, you rhino. Thanks so much, Mark.
You're welcome.